Welcome to Popaholics, the show about hot takes. Hotter than hot, tasty pancakes and hotter than hot, tasty dino dumps. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined, as always, by my two favorite movie and pop culture fanatics.
Chris Conkling.
And Brian Dupree.
And we are ending Jurassic June. It's been a very fun month, and for the loyal listeners that have been listening to the audio feed, you know we've been covering all the Jurassic Park sequels leading up to Jurassic World Dominion. It just so happens that there was so many Jurassic sequels that this episode fell a week after the release of Dominion, but I think that it's given us enough time to digest this big old piece of dino dumpage to talk about. Not to spoil our thoughts too much.
So are you saying that we ate the dino shit and then digested it and released it?
You know, I don't know.
This is the result of the digestion of the dino poop that we ingested.
Yep, absolutely. And we're putting it on video.
Circle of life. It's beautiful.
Indeed it is. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to do the show today to wrap up our Jurassic June month. Before we get into the content that everybody's here to see, which is about Jurassic World Dominion, which we'll have chapter markers. Chris does a great job of making sure that you can just skip ahead to our ramblings about the entire month. So if you just want to hear our thoughts, skip ahead. But boys, I did want to know, how do we feel about these Jurassic sequels in the context of seeing everything now? We won't talk too much on Dominion, but how are we feeling about Jurassic Park's legacy in context with its sequels?
I think the most depressing realization of this month of rewatches is that I came to realize that the Jurassic franchise has essentially just become Fast and Furious with dinosaurs. The Jurassic World Legacy sequel trilogy is utterly silly and meaningless for the most part, and makes me sad.
I would argue that it doesn't have some of the more beneficial qualities of the Fast and Furious series. I would say that's
I would agree.
A higher bar that you might be attributed to.
But it's equally as silly, definitely.
Brian, how have you felt going through these Jurassic sequels leading up to Dominion?
For me, and we'll get into Dominion, but I would say it's actually more they've gone onto the Bond trajectory, and they've gotten full on like action adventure movies. And I don't know. I think I've had a decent amount of fun going through this. I think the sequel trilogy has a level of self-awareness to the silliness that I really appreciate. Maybe not so much in Dominion. We'll get into that a little bit when we're talking about that specifically. But I think in terms of the ideas that these movies are bringing up, I'm largely been on board and feeling like, okay, this is a fun conceptual play through line with what they started in the original trilogy and bringing in some new ideas, some of which are working, some of which are not working, and running with them to their natural, not necessarily natural.
I don't think natural is the right word, Brian.
Their unnatural conclusions.
Genetic monstrosity conclusions.
But with those ideas, still giving us some fun monster stuff, which is always a necessity here. So I don't know. I've had a pretty great time going through these, even though I can acknowledge that they're not incredible movies.
Yeah, I've teeter-tottered on how I'm feeling about everything. There are moments when I'm like, B monster movies, having more fun. But I think that this series has had a bit of an identity crisis. I don't think it solidified itself as Bond. Bond had eras, and it had moments where it was consistently one thing. You know, whether it was, cool guy 70s, secret spy thriller. Okay, we're getting more goofy. Okay, now we're 90s action. All right, now we're like self-serious Bond tale. It had movements, and this series is so inconsistent tonally.
See, for the Bond thing, I kind of mean the action adventure, like world traveling kind of
the globe-trotting aspects,
big set pieces, and also like the
consistency doesn't matter.
Who it's
I think that's to me that makes more sense of like, we don't actually care about the legacy. Like, we'll mention it, but don't think too hard about it, which Bond frequently.
Which they literally, it's a line in this movie that we'll talk about later. Yeah. But the villains being these people who maybe outwardly or publicly are the good guys and showing themselves as good, but behind the scenes they have ulterior motives. They're kind of like big, outsized, archetypal kind of villains. So I've kind of I don't know, maybe just saying it's gone into other genres from horror, and has fallen into those tropes in ways that I think can be fun. But yes, I agree that it does have a bit of an identity crisis.
Identity crisis, indeed. And we're going to talk about the ending to not only it tries to do the Disney thing of like, we're going to end the Jurassic series and finally
the end of the era.
The end of an era. So we're going to talk about whether or not we thought it was successful or not. I don't know if we spoiled our thoughts at all, but we are talking Jurassic World Dominion.
Blue had a baby. That's impossible.
Hey, girl.
You look just like your mother.
I promise you, I am gonna get her back. Genetic power has now been unleashed. We made a terrible mistake. The doomsday clock might be about out of time.
If our world's gonna survive, what matters is what we do now.
I could use your expertise.
You coming or what?
A baby raptor? I made a promise we would bring her home. You made a promise to a dinosaur? Yeah. What?
That is from the trailer of Jurassic World Dominion. No colon, very important thing to point out. It was directed by Colin Trevorrow, written by Colin Trevorrow and Emily Carmichael, with a score by Michael Giacchino, cinematography by John Schwartzman, with a budget of $185 million. It's grossed, as of this record, $679 million, which, as you boys know, is certified good ROI.
Was there ever any doubt that that would be the case?
It's not doing as big of numbers as
it's no Top Gun Maverick.
It is definitely no Top Gun Maverick, at least domestically for sure. Stars Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, DeWanda Wise, and many more. B.D. Wong is in there. He's coming back. He's really the linchpin of the whole series, as it turns out, especially in these later films. What are we going to be talking about? Non-spoiler thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion if you haven't seen it yet. We'll talk about our general thoughts before spoiling it, in spoilers, stand-up moments, and final thoughts. It's pretty standard Popaholics fare. So let's jump into our non-spoiler thoughts of Jurassic World Dominion. I think first we do have to preface this by the fact that we saw this in some different formats.
We did.
Brian, you went with the very safe, very understandable IMAX format. I believe it was.
I did.
As I call it, LIMAX, as many people do, which is you saw it in a restricted IMAX view, but still larger aspect ratio than the normal theatrical experience. And me and Chris, we stayed true to our word despite how hard it was to schedule and how we had to overcome some obstacles. We saw it in 4DX, as we had seen Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And that was an experience. Chris, just real briefly, let's talk some 4DX.
We should. 4DX, Christian and I dubbed unrelenting cinema.
Really was quite...
This cinema slaps you in the face.
I realized how old I am and how I am not a young man anymore from the 4DX experience. Chris, your overall thoughts on the 4DX?
There were some moments that I felt genuinely bad for Christian. I looked over at him and it seemed like his back was about to snap in half. And I realized that I think we'd made a mistake, that it's been several years since Fallen Kingdom has come out. Christian and I are older now.
Global pandemic of sedentary lifestyle that it's good.
I will say this, and I do want to give this disclaimer before I talk about my thoughts about the film. I'll talk about 4DX experience. It's involved with what I'm about to say. But this is the same type of disclaimer that Brian has given for a couple of films over the last 3 years, which is like, my theater experience impacted how I feel about this movie a lot. Christian and I initially booked these 4DX tickets, and we were the only people in the theater. The day that we were meant to go see the movie, Christian sent me a photo, and literally every seat in the theater had been booked. And I have been actively avoiding going to fully packed showings of films this entire time. So while the 4DX amusement park ride experience enhanced initially our experience with Fallen Kingdom several years ago, we weren't even in the middle of a pandemic. The fact that I was jam-packed next to a stranger on one of my sides and literally surrounded by people. I don't even think when we saw Fallen Kingdom, the theater was packed. On top of that, just the sheer ridiculousness of how the theater seats moves. It was a horrible fucking experience. The best, and I told Christian this multiple times. Christian and I don't get to hang out in person very often anymore. So literally the best part of this entire night was getting to see my friend Christian in person and like getting to spend a few hours with him and talk about the movie afterward. But the theater going experience was utterly miserable. So however you hear me describe my opinions of Jurassic World Dominion over the course of this episode, know that I'm fully aware of the viewing experience, and I do plan on going back and revisiting this film at some point in time to see if my opinion has changed. But the theater going experience wasn't the best. Christian, do you have anything you want to add about the 4D experience?
No, I had a very different opinion. I work more closely with the public than my friend Chris does, and
Right.
I've seen movies in packed theaters and kind of had the chance to, and I've gotten COVID-19, which Chris, I think you're the only member of the Popaholics podcast that hasn't gotten it.
Haven't gotten it, yeah.
And vaccinated and all this other stuff. So less stressed out around crowds. Less anxious around crowds probably than Chris is. So
Definitely.
that didn't color the experience whatsoever. And actually, hour and a half into this movie, 4DX, dude, as soon as the seats started moving I don't remember they moved so crazy. I'm having a great time. All the stupid action scenes that I normally be like, well, it was a bunch of CG. It was kind of BS. I'm in it. This movie starts out, Chris Pratt's on horses, and you're galloping. And I'm like,
Yeah.
This is why we did 4DX. And I was like, no regrets whatsoever. No regrets about this experience.
It was also 3D 4DX.
Yeah, and the 3D is subpar. 4DX.
It was terrible.
You get someone shoots a gun. Psh, psh, you got air coming out the side.
The motors and the fans were obnoxiously loud. They were drowning out the audio of the movie to the point where I think the theater had tried to remedy this in a way where they turned the volume up on some of the speakers so high in other showings that they had literally blown the speakers. So there was crackling over the course of the showing of the film.
Yeah. The speaker system. It didn't sound like the speakers were broken. It sounded like they turned up the volume too loud, or it was clipping.
Just not optimal. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the first wrinkle. What action scene that we get at the beginning? I think from a visual 3D standpoint, pretty subpar. I'm galloping, and I was like, this is why we chose 4DX for this exactly. I'm having way more fun. I'm on a theme park ride. This movie's like 2.5 hours long, though. So halfway through, there's like a lull in a lot of action that happens for an extended period of time. And then once the action started back, I had been sitting for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then my back started hurting, and now every action scene was like, oh shit, action's happening.
Now the chair is like actively punching you in your spine during the third act of this film.
I'm not gonna lie, the first time a raptor falls down a snowy mountain and shit sprays you in the face, you're like, fuck, that's hilarious. wow, this movie's silly, but I'm glad that it's more of a theme park ride because this movie's very much that. By the 400th time that you're sprayed in the face, you're like, all right, I want to get off the ride, and I'm sick of being herky-jerked around. Fallen Kingdom, I remember getting that fatigue very late in the viewing, like towards the very end.
It's a shorter movie as well. You know?
And this fatigue hit halfway through, and it's a very long film. And so the 40X initially made the action scenes way more fun for me, and I was Chris could attest. I was laughing 60% of this movie, just giggling at like, oh, they're shooting air behind our head again.
That's, you know, it literally is a theme park ride because you weren't the only one laughing in the theater. Like the entire theater is kind of like uproarious with laughter because of how shocking some of the movements can be, and they're surprising. It's identical to one of those theme park shows that uses the same technology. Will they're like shoot air at you or like nudge you in the back or something's like skittering on the floor. It's the exact same thing. So you're gonna get the same exact reaction from the audience.
And I gotta say, Chris, we are movie critics subpar at best, and we talk about these things. We had a packed house, probably about 150 people. Uproarious applause at the end of this film.
Yeah. Yep.
People were laughing and hooting and hollering. It was a good time at the theater for all of our audience. They ate it up and they loved the 40X experience. So a crowd pleasing,
and I'm happy for them.
A crowd pleasing experience. Yeah, it is. It was hilarious. Like 10 minutes in the movie, there's a scene on the plains where wind is happening, and our characters start to talk. There's not a lot of music. It's just dialogue, and all you hear in the theater is, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, 40X, not the most pristine. But at the end of the day, I didn't care because it's Jurassic World Dominion. But yeah, I would say that I was laughing, hooting, hollering, so much fun. I was like, this is why I saw it in this format. I'm having a good time. Chris, very uncomfortable from the jump. So I feel terrible because Chris is locked, arms crossed, moving in his roller coaster seat. And I was like, I'm so... And Chris, your arms are hitting me. They're hitting your neighbor. And like, I was like, fuck, I'm so sorry, Chris. Like the whole time I was like, I'm having fun, but damn, I'm so sorry I did that to you.
No, you know, it's like I said, I'm excited that we got to hang out. We're never going to see a 40X movie ever again.
It was, you laughed during the calibration. There was like a light calibration that happened before the movie started. And you were like, fun. That's why we did this. And
but we were laughing because it was so horribly tracked to the visuals on the screen.
Yeah.
That's really what I was laughing at. It wasn't the movement. I was like, somebody needs to go back into the program and like readjust the animation for this fucking...
I mean, it was in 3D, so I had 3D glasses that I didn't put on because as watchers can see, I have glasses on. So I really just put them on right when the movie starts. So I had the glasses in my hand, and like we didn't know the 40X was going to start halfway through a trailer when it started calibrating and moving us all fucking crazy. And my glasses literally flew out of my hand.
Multiple times. In fact, while we were watching the movie, I was actually thinking about how I really wish I had bought a large popcorn. So intentionally, as the seats are moving, I could have like thrown popcorn into the air. I think that would be so funny to watch. Somebody losing all their popcorn uncontrollably as the seats are jostling around in the theater.
The seats also
hilarious.
A not very comfortable back massaging fashion, just like punch you in the back. Which again, cool for like the first 5 times it happens. 2 hours into the movie, you're like, you can stop punching me in the back when the dinosaurs bite each other.
The only option
less effective.
The theater gives you is to turn the water off or on.
Yeah.
Everything else is locked in. You cannot change it.
Which, Chris, you even looked at me and you're like, we should turn the water off, right? And I was like, no.
You're like, hell no. And I had already turned my water off. So I was like, all right, water back on. Here we go.
He's sprayed in the mouth. And you're like, there's COVID in this.
Oh, no.
Chris.
Oh, then I get it.
Chris, you were so uncomfortable the whole time. I'm so sorry. You looked like you were like, I was laughing. I honestly was having fun for half of it. And you looked miserable from pretty much the jump, and I apologize.
It was an experience.
So that's 40.
I'm happy that we had the experience together. Brian, how was IMAX? Limax.
Because I was able to get off work a little bit early and see a screening on a Wednesday, the second week, the week after it came out. So it was not a packed screening. There were probably, 14 people scattered throughout my theater. So I was able to, I felt relatively comfortable, and good screening experience overall. Can't complain. They actually turned the lights out completely, which
imagine that
heaven. Screen looked good. Projection was fine.
The only light that was lit in our theater was the water button. That and the glowing ash that fell from the sky at one point.
To replicate snow? Was it supposed to be snow? Or was it supposed to be the burning bugs? Oh, whoops.
There's also... Chris, did you notice they do smells?
Oh, I did. I did notice that. I was going to mention it to you. Something we're going to have to talk about. Something we're going to have to talk about in spoilers, because, man, they kind of really did pinpoint the smell.
I don't know. There's a scene very early. Again, it's not a huge spoiler. There's like a campfire and they're cooking s'mores, and it just smelled like, I don't know.
Oh, I never got a whiff of that smell.
Oh no,
I'm talking about later in the movie.
It was like a Yankee candle that was at the end of its smell, where it was kind of like there's a hint of a smell, but it just smells like burning. Anyway, that was just to put a pin in the viewing formats conversation. That's the last movie, other than maybe a horror movie. I might see a short horror movie in 4DX if it's like a known quantity that it's a good 4DX experience. It fully solidified. Fallen Kingdom did not convince me that, this is how I got to see movies. But Dominion definitely convinced me, like, I should never see a movie like this ever again.
I've heard that the Top Gun Maverick 4DX experience is actually awesome.
Shit, damn it.
And I feel like that movie's perfectly suited for that viewing experience.
Yeah.
We'll never know, though. We missed our window.
Yeah, I want to smell Tom Cruise's butthole. Anyway, let's move on to the actual content of the movie. We just spent, how long did we just spend? We spent a very long time talking about 4DX, an experience that I'm sure none of our listeners had experienced. Anyway, it's a gimmicky format. Everybody knows it, but Chris, it was also equally great to see you. Also great that we got a drink for the premiere, or before we watched it, and the bartender was like, I love all the Jurassic movies, unequivocally, except for this one. Very vehemently was like,
this bodes well.
We've had ebbs and flows. This guy was straight on board for all of them and said, I love all the movies. This one blows. It's like, cool.
Jeez.
So what are our general thoughts on, me and Chris have been talking a lot about being sprayed in the face and jostled around. Brian, I'm very interested to hear, what are your general thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion?
Yeah, so I brought it up a little bit earlier, but I think this movie in particular pretty much goes full on spy movie, action adventure. And it doesn't all work, and some of the plot is undeniably silly in there to kind of just get our main characters into the same location at times in exceedingly ridiculous ways. Sometimes just classic action movie. You guys brought up Fast and Furious earlier. Not a terrible comparison. I think the ideas here, they're really wrapping things up from seeds that have been planted in the original movie. I think they're bringing them full circle here.
Biosyn seeds have been planted.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the plot here, but the idea of man playing God, genetic manipulation, and this modern spin on it. I've oddly found myself thinking of this as kind of like a prequel to Interstellar. I don't know if you guys remember the first third of Interstellar, but without getting into specifics.
That is the most interesting commentary I've heard about this movie, and I think it's very, very poignant. Brian,
I can see why you would say
really
that.
recontextualize this entire movie, I'm going to change my entire opinion of it. No, but I think
I
it's
can't
genuinely.
I can't tell if you're being
no,
serious.
genuinely very clever. And
Jurassic World Dominion, great Interstellar prequel, terrible
with dinos.
Jurassic sequel.
see, there was dinosaurs that we had brought back.
There was a character that was kind of doing a McConaughey impression in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there is.
That's accurate.
Who disappears from the movie? He's never seen again.
That's not true. That's not true. We have to talk about that. We have to talk about in spoilers. But
Malta.
Yeah,
for sure.
Anyway, Brian, continue. I'm sorry.
And then disappears. It definitively disappears for sure.
For good reason.
Yeah.
There's an idea that was brought up, and we talked about it in spoilers for Fallen Kingdom. Something that I thought the movie didn't really flesh out fully. They try and flesh this thing out fully here. I think it does tie into stuff that has been building from the first movie. It gets very hand wavy sci-fi for me, but they are trying to go for something and trying to wrap it up. And I kind of appreciated the attempt, even though it didn't entirely work for me.
I will say what you're alluding to right now is one of the things that I told Christian upon walking out of the theater that I did think was a pro of this movie, that particular story element.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Pratt and Howard here are kind of like the concerned parents, and they're doing this like self-serious thing that was a little less interesting to me. But they're still good in that role. They and Isabella Sermon are also great together. Laura Dern and Sam Neill is kind of where I'm enjoying this most. We get this funny. You hated it, Chris.
I want to hear the rest of your opinion. I'm sorry that I
No, it's okay.
I made a face.
You know, their chemistry in the first movie is very much like there's implied things are going on, but it's never like super explicit. Here we get this like long-term sexual tension, awkwardness that's happening. That's kind of fun. And, all of the, like everyone knows them and knows them together, but she has kids with someone else. And it just creates this kind of, interesting dynamic, and they get into some just like silly, almost slapstick level spycraft sort of stuff that isn't always working, but is kind of fun. Goldblum, as usual, he's doing his thing. I think they kind of do a pump fake with Goldblum's character that I liked here. But his job I appreciated here. The dinosaurs, there's so many here that it's kind of an overload, but I think there is a lot of practical stuff here that looks really, really good. The movie kind of begins and ends with like montages of dinos that I think kind of bookend the movie well, even though ultimately, in terms of speaking to like this ending to trilogies, it does feel quite anticlimactic. The third act, I knew it was close to over, and I was like, all right, there's got to be some other like big set piece that just never came, and the movie kind of just ends.
Yeah.
Which was kind of strange. But the Raptors, and I'm not sure if this was the screening that I saw, if you guys feel similarly, but Blue and Beta specifically kind of have this like really fidgety movement to them that was almost uncomfortable to watch.
I think Beta has that movement because there are many shots where Beta is an animatronic.
Okay. So yeah, it was kind of, I could tell that something was happening, but it almost was uncomfortable to watch. So I don't know. It didn't necessarily take me out of it, but just kind of was like, I was like, what is going on with that?
Possibly, I mean, it's not in the literal definition, but maybe like something like an uncanny valley type of thing taking place.
I think that could be. Kind of wrapping up, I think when the movie does horror stuff, I think it actually has some good tense moments, some good horror stuff when it gets there. Obviously, this is a big movie, so it's not constant. And then we've had a lot of in the last year pure nostalgia fests. And while this movie has nods to the previous movies, I don't think it entirely leans on them for the plot. And I appreciated that. And there's one specific reference that I think is almost too subtle that I think two of us on the podcast did not pick up immediately what was being implied from this reference. And we'll talk about that in spoilers. But
I think that just comes down to either bad writing or bad direction, Brian. I'm not.
I wouldn't disagree necessarily. Yeah. But yeah, I ultimately had fun with this one, even though, it's not my favorite by any stretch, but I appreciate the ideas and had a decent time with it.
This has been a similar thread throughout, Brian. Appreciate you bringing that positive energy to the podcast. Swing in the opposite direction as we go to Chris, your overall opinions of Jurassic World Dominion.
Oh, man. This movie's terrible. It's awful. Brian, you said that you feel as though it doesn't lean very heavily on the nostalgia and the fan service, and I completely disagree. I think a lot of what Laura Dern and Sam Neill are doing in this film is entirely reliant on the audience recognizing who those characters are and bringing some type of nostalgia to them, to hopefully, the film hopes that it will then enhance the terrible writing. That simply by seeing these characters again on screen together, that is enough to justify doing it. This movie has lost all of the magic for me that the original Jurassic Park and several of the sequels still managed to muster. This was just, I know I had the disclaimer at the beginning that the theater experience probably swayed my opinion of how I feel about the film, but I really do feel like the entire movie is just like a very shallow fan service centric story. And they had this excellent premise at the end of Fallen Kingdom, in that dinosaurs are now loose in the world. How does that change our ecosystems? How does that change, society's infrastructure, and how we're handling these new apex predators being introduced into the world? And the movie just says, I don't care about that.
It
swings in an entirely different direction.
News intro
at the very beginning.
That's it, right? The very beginning.
And then it decides like, oh, there's a different conflict and threat within the film. And I don't know. This has all the same seasonings as Rise of Skywalker does to me. And that it's just empty storytelling, masking itself under nostalgia, bringing Laura Dern back, bring Jeff Goldblum back, bring Sam Neill back. Jeff Goldblum does have some great moments because I think he's kind of almost speaking for the audience at times. There are a couple moments that Christian and I looked at one another and were like, nod in acknowledgement of, what he's saying and how meta he might be being in these moments.
Slight spoiler, Jeff Goldblum literally says, Jurassic World, not a fan.
Not a fan.
And so I lost my shit. I was
so funny.
Like, oh, someone's aware of the movie they're in the series.
So I'm sorry, loyal listeners and viewers. This is by far the worst Jurassic movie in the entire franchise, in my opinion. When you see Laura Dern for the first time on screen, or even Sam Neill, there should be this like moment of elation, and I just didn't feel that at all, despite being an enormous fan of the original movie. And I even enjoyed elements of Jurassic Park 3, seeing Sam Neill return in that film as Alan Grant. But this movie isn't working for me on any level whatsoever. And I hate to be such a downer. And this might be the harshest I've ever been on our podcast toward a movie. But I just think it's
I did not enjoy it.
Big pile of dino poop.
Yeah. All right. I'll thanks Chris for sharing. Appreciate that. I knew how you felt about the movie 5 seconds into it, watching you arms crossed. For the listeners, That is Chris, arms crossed, rocking violently in a chair. Yeah, this movie's definitely the messiest of any of the movies we've seen. I think it is the most crazy, trying to do the most, seemingly introducing plot points that seem like they don't belong in this film or belong in a different film. It really is. It really is all over the place in so many different ways. I mean, it's two different movies. It's got a pretty strong A and B plot that feel very disconnected, and then when the A and B connect, they feel insanely disconnected still. And when the movie resolves, it feels very uncomfortable and not cohesive. I did find myself, as I talked about with my 4DX experience, an hour and a half into the film, I'm having a lot of fun. The two acts preceding the third act, good time. Just fun. I really have shut my brain off. And the 4DX, like Chris Pratt's on a horse, I'm on a horse. And Chris Pratt on a horse chasing dinosaurs cooler than Chris Pratt on a motorcycle with raptor buddies.
Do you mind if I interject really quick here for a minute?
Good.
Those sequences are awesome. Like seeing herds of dinosaurs run with horses, fucking amazing. Why was that not leaned into for the premise of this movie? Like seeing how the dinosaurs interact with our pre-existing world. They're beautiful sequences. It boggles my mind. Anyway, Christian, continue.
Yeah, no, and I think when the movie's leaning into that, it feels more like the movie it's supposed to be, and it diverges into something I'll get into in spoilers about like what are they trying to say. It feels like they're trying to say something that's separate from what maybe you would think of if you thought of these 6 films or 3 films together. Yeah, what the most disappointing thing is, Alan Grant coming back and Laura Dern's character and Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum seems to be aware he's in a movie, which is a very enjoyable part throughout. Laura Dern and Alan Grant are in the movie and they're characters in the movie as opposed to Jeff Goldblum's character. And Alan Grant is completely devoid of, Sam Neill's character is completely devoid of any character. He's lost all semblance of a character from Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3. Laura Dern has a little bit more to do and a little bit more agency, but her character's so focused on this romance that it voids it, and her mission ultimately with Alan Grant is kind of silly. And there's a point where a character...
And also, I think the romance is detrimental to what Laura Dern's character was in the first film.
Listen, I'm not against them having a romance. Listen, it's the romance of the century, not since... Pam from The Office and Alan Krasinski's character have we really wanted a will they won't they. It's a 40-year blue and delta ball, if you get what I'm saying. We're really stocking this Gru. Weekly Upload listeners know that reference, and we're building up. Sure, fine. Like, I'm actually not against that as a concept for what they can do in this film. I think it actually makes a lot of sense from where we start to where we can end. How they accomplish it. Alan Grant he's like Qui-Gon Jinn in this fucking film. Like, there's nothing to him. He just says things and he goes like, raptors. It's literally like that's the deepest ideology that this character could have. Like with the original one, he's like an avid paleontologist, and in this movie they're like, you're just gonna follow Laura Dern. Like, he has no agency whatsoever. It's very stupid. And Laura Dern's character is motivated by overthrowing a corporation that's gone too far, and which isn't, I don't know. There's some things that could play in Jurassic Park, but it just doesn't feel cohesive to what we know this character to have been and what she's gone through in the series. So it feels like a loss. And there's at a point where our new characters meet our old characters. And boy, it's just like 10 characters on screen, and it's just it's really ridiculous.
I was holding that until spoilers, but I definitely
I'm sorry.
I want to go back to that.
No, there are
definitely.
shots in the trailer. We played the trailer. There's shots in the trailer of all of these characters together. But in Avengers, you get 15 characters, and sometimes you're like, wow, these characters are net. And somehow Marvel's always able to have these characters say one line to each other, establish a relationship really quickly, get involved in an action, all feel like they're part of the scene, come together, combine their unique and just to see that happen of people like, oh, they could do it, let's do it. and fail so drastically on being able to incorporate characters from different properties. It's like the lesson of like, this isn't easy. And this is what it looks like when it's just bad. And it just makes people who just like the newer films probably feel weird. And people like me who grew up on Jurassic Park feel weird. Like the whole thing feels very weird. And the only saving grace of Jeff Goldblum being like, yeah, it's a whole bunch of bullshit, right? That is a saving grace of it. The crux of this, it feels like so much shit jammed into one plot. And it's not that each element is inherently bad. Like there is stuff, set pieces, concepts working in this movie that for me I'm not as down as Chris is. Like compared to Jurassic World, I'm like, this is really shooting for the fences and it's kind of all over the place from the start. Chris,
sorry to interrupt you again. There is one scene, and I will mention it when we talk about standout moments, that I legitimately love in this movie. One single sequence.
See,
we'll
and I'm different. Like there is a bunch of sequences that I really like. One that I know that you're talking about that we agree on, and a handful of others that I really like. There are elements, and then there's just elements that are just really bad in an overall direction and writing that pull the whole project down so far that, yeah, this is definitely bottom tier. But I can't say I didn't have fun for the first half. I was having fun. I was in a Fast and Furious James Bond popcorn roller coaster, partly
until
because
the seat started breaking your back.
Well, that was part of it, and then it's just the whole back half to me is so fucking messy, and that the B plot with our older characters is very rarely working. But when they're having fun, it's fun. When it tries to do anything beyond have fun, and God, that third act it's like, please, like, check it in the watch. Please be over. This is getting grueling. Not my favorite cinema. So overall, definitely bottom of the barrel. I do think this, Chris. As much as I'm coming off a little more positive, this has to be bottom of the barrel. I think I even put it under Jurassic World because I think the first half of Jurassic World is stronger cohesively, and I too
would place this under Jurassic World. I think
tough.
It's the worst one. And there are a lot of things upon that, if you listen to our Jurassic World episode, there are a lot of things that we said about a rewatch that I still hold to be true, but
I think I might, I don't know. I'll have to think about that later, but
I think I probably agree with that. I mean, I had much more fun with Jurassic World than both of you guys did. So
yeah.
I think that movie is undeniably more fun than this movie. This one is kind of very down and dour for a lot of it.
I don't know. There's a middle part of this film that's like perfect for me. It's like a middle part of this film where I'm like, if the whole film was just this tone, and like 90 minutes, I'm like, this is, if you're gonna remake these as fun adventure films, I think it hits a stride. It hits a high in its midway point that I'm here for in a certain context, not in like obviously a shadow of what Jurassic Park is, but there's a part of this film where I'm having a ton of fun, and I think it's silly and fun that I can get down for it. Any thoughts before we go into spoilers?
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right, Chris, you obviously have one, so I'm going to make sure you get that. But let's go around and make sure we just talk about some of our favorite moments that are just standout favorite moments that are good, and then maybe we can point out some of the things that are really pulling us down. Chris, let's start with you. I think we share this one.
We do.
We do. Afterwards, yeah.
We talked about it when we walked out of the theater. I think the only moment in the entire film that's kind of channeling the horror elements of the original Jurassic Park, like some of the best moments that we talked about in Fallen Kingdom, like where this franchise is really functioning at its best, is the moment when Bryce Dallas Howard lands in the jungle environment and she has to army crawl into the water away from this like blind Therizinosaurus. It is shot so well, and the tension is built to such a degree that it really does feel like some of the most tense moments in the original Jurassic Park movie. The scene where she's holding her breath under the water and the Therizinosaurus, now I'm hitting my mic, is screaming at her, roaring at her, and you can see the vibrations in the water. Awesome. I wish there was more of that in this movie. But that was literally...
Chris, if I was the marketer of this movie, if I looked at this movie and it's like, you need to sell this movie, you got to put butts in seats. And I knew this, I literally would have just shown this 4-minute scene.
Yeah.
As the trailer. And I think this movie would have made more money. Because
definitely.
I think it is nearly perfect the way that it's framed and shot, and invokes the best of what the series can offer. And it works so well contained in its own essence. It almost feels like it doesn't belong in this movie.
It's excellent, and the Therizinosaurus.
Yep.
Christian and I had to look up its name when we got out of the theater.
But I remembered it. I remembered it from the books, from my dinosaur books back in the day.
Okay, but seeing it do the almost like center of the football, just digging in. Very interesting, and it's like it had me thinking like, wow, I wonder if they knew this is how it fought. It gets a little bit silly when they ultimately use it at the end, but very cool new dino that with the first dig in, I was like, oh wow, this guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want. You want different dinosaurs displayed and on film and put in situations that we feel a fear for our protagonist is doing the things that the original Jurassic Park did really well. It's really the biggest node to the vision that Spielberg had for the terror of dinosaurs brought to life in modern era. It's very.
And we have to use them to continue the dominance of the T-Rex, because that's the important.
But it's
part of this franchise.
All that bullshit. Yes, 100%. But it's got the scene itself has patience. And it's like a oneer. You get a very good one shot of her army crawling in, and there's just dread that you really don't feel much at all. It doesn't feel like it belongs in this movie. I'm glad it's there because Chris is mentioning
genuinely
it.
think
I liked it. You liked it, but it feels.
This is the only moment in the whole film where I felt any semblance of tension or terror for any of the characters. Every other moment, and you were talking about this earlier, Christian, the scene at the end where literally like 9 of our fucking main characters are on screen in a conga line trying to get away from the Giganotosaurus. I was like, as soon as I realized that the movie didn't have the courage to kill any of these people, which they can't because they're supposed to be like these... like I was talking about earlier, like pure fan service, representation of our nostalgia, like the reason we're going to see this movie. They would never ever kill any of these characters. I was like, this is so incredibly silly. There's no tension if none of these characters are going to die. It's so horrible. I'm sorry.
Positive things we're talking about, Chris.
I apologize.
No. It's all good. Brian, what are some of your stand-up moments?
Early on, when Maisie's character sneaks out into the town and she sees the long-necked dinosaur. What is
like an apatosaurus, maybe? I can't. Those types of dinosaurs have many different names. I can't.
Brachiosaurus, Brontosaurus.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So one of these. It's in this sequence where we're seeing the dinosaurs in humanity, and it's basically gone onto this farm. We see someone with a torch start leading it out, and its partner is like comes up out of the snow as well. And it was just this moment that felt like a recreation of that initial time where we see the same dinosaur in Jurassic Park 1, and kind of like recreated this wonder moment through Maisie's eyes and seeing these things up close. And I thought it actually worked really well, and kind of, to your earlier point, Chris established that this is how it is with dinosaurs in the world now in a decent way prior to getting into what the rest of the movie ultimately was about.
Yeah, kind of what we thought this movie was going to be more of, and what ultimately maybe would have been a more compelling direction to take the film in.
But no, I think a plot about prehistoric locusts devouring
Chris, positive.
crops is a much
Those are.
it's a much better narrative choice, right?
This is a plot
In a franchise about dinosaurs.
This is a positive point for me. They're taking big biblical swings here, like ancient locust plagues, making it like a Monsanto thing, basically. Yeah. I'm completely here for this sort of
I will say, I'll go on to one of my positive moments. The initial scene with our little kids, you take little kids, put them in terror. That's classic Jurassic Park. With the locust is terrifying, and I think it's well done. I think it's near the same level as the scene that Chris was pointing out. There's a part of you that's like, why is this in this movie? What's happening? But I will say for the scene it is in setting up the stakes, like you get like real bugs. Like I thought it was a very well done scene in one of the most impressive, scary ways that you could talk about giant prehistoric locusts swarming a field, and like they're banging on the doors and the doors are rattling. Like the 40X I got little bugs on my back and little psh, 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 spray. I'm like, oh fuck, little bugs, big bugs. I think this is an effective scene. Does it belong in this movie? I don't know. That's up for debate. But for the scene itself, I think it looks great, and the sound design's really terrifying, and Giacchino's score, I think, is working at this moment of terror. This is cool. I think that's a cool scene. Does it belong in this movie? That's up for debate, but very cool scene, I will say. Well done.
Did you have a favorite you wanted to go to, Christian?
Oh, I was like sprinkling it in very slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, any other moments?
Another standout for me, the cave reptile dinos that we get when they're trapped underground. I thought that was all really cool. I thought the design of those were awesome.
Yeah, it was like a weird Goonies Disneyland-esque type of thing. I don't
kind of silly, but a little bit, I don't know. It was kind of creepy too.
Feels like feels like it's from a movie that's not. So many of these seppies that I like that I will keep mentioning. So like, and this had a whole different theme park attraction to it. But yeah, I think it was an interesting threat. Apexing, a little silly how they get, and this will go for a lot of these set pieces, a little silly and anticlimactic how they get out of the situation. And as it ramps up, it becomes less and less like scary and more like, all right, camera's still shaking and they're good. But the design of the creatures, not a creature
and they
scene.
Stumbled into a room with our legacy characters.
Imagine that.
Oh, hey, didn't notice I'd see you.
I recognize you. You're the dinosaur people.
I read your book. Everyone's read everyone else's book.
I read your book. Oh, you're the guy who fucking palms raptors. And then they have a fake conversation. They have a fake conversation.
The three-way.
Horrible.
So absurd.
Not great.
Incredible.
Horrible. Positive. We're in positive. So you like cave scene?
Positives. Here, I'll give you a positive. Brian mentioned this earlier. This is an element of the movie that I do like. And I think, last week when we were talking about Fallen Kingdom, I mentioned a sequence that does not work for Christian, but worked for me, that I think would have benefited more being in the previous movie. And what I'm about to mention in this movie, I kind of feel the same about. Everything with Lockwood's daughter, not Maisie, but what was her name in the movie? Was it Rachel Lockwood? Charlotte Lockwood. I think you're right, Christian.
How the fuck did I know a name? That never happens.
Everything with the woman that Maisie is cloned from, introducing the fact that she is still a clone, but she was technically grown within her womb and was viewed as her daughter.
Wait a second, that's just a
baby.
Yeah,
that's just a regular baby.
That's in vitro fertilization. We got that shit.
Yeah, I genuinely did like all those elements. And last week when I was complaining about how the script handles Maisie in Fallen Kingdom, these elements would have worked better in Fallen Kingdom to give us a little more insight. I know it ties into the Locust plot.
It would have been better if they introduced the support character in the wrapping up 6 films, and they introduced so much shit just to explain the plot of this film. Yeah, it feels.
But
like
I like that we got a little
retcon.
more about. Yeah, it was a decent retcon for Maisie's character, and
Oh no, that stuff all every time it's like, I'm Charlotte talking on a computer camera. I'm like, yeah, fuck you, movie. I'm good.
She's shown them by her captor at the time.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's stupid. It's really stupid. I put that in the negative category. That's the stuff I was kind of interested to see what they would do with, and it just felt weird. Another highlight for me, I'm gonna go to Malta. We get like a Mos Eisley of animatronic dinosaurs, and this the idea of like this underground slave trade. We got our new character who I think is pretty cool, probably a highlight, cool character in it, which is see if I can find
great
it.
value, great value. Matthew McConaughey gets eaten in this scene.
Yeah, is
Right.
God, let me make sure I find this. Oh God, where is this girl's name?
They immediately get figured out. Just like we know that you're not from around these parts.
Is it Ramsay? Who's our chick that owns the plane?
Kayla Watts.
Is she not? She's not listed
It's
in the...
DeWanda Weiss.
DeWanda Weiss. Okay, DeWanda Weiss's character, super fun, and I think pointed out on other publications and stuff that like in all these these sequel movies, the side characters are always better. I really liked what our CIA dinosaur guy in this now, but in the last one, Justice Smith's character. Last time I liked it. We get girl from Comedy Bang Bang. What's her name in the Jurassic World?
Daniela Pineda. Oh no, you're talking about Lauren Lapkus.
Lauren Lapkus and
It's an Easter egg with Lauren Lapkus and Jake Johnson.
Jake Johnson. They're great. Like these
appear on
side
the
characters
iPad,
are always
yeah.
way better than Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. Who I'll talk about later. I really like her character, and she's forefront in the Malta scene. I think this is cool. I think the set piece is one of the most fun set pieces. The Raptors chasing Chris Pratt on a motorcycle, kind of silly, but like, I don't know. At this point, I'm having fun. Yeah, and it's like goofy, and it's that idea of like dinosaurs exist in the world, and that's cool. That's like you're taking that idea and you're making it. You're having weird like people cockfighting dinosaurs. Yeah, fuck yeah, yes. We're here. We're taking cars to space. Yes, like I come to movies to escape. Dinosaurs are being traded and cockfighting in an underground seedy place off an island in Africa or wherever the fuck we are. Yes, cool, 100%. I think the set design of that and all that stuff is very cool. Chris Pratt just gets to be cool motorcycle dude, reunites with the dude from Jurassic World, and they do like a cage thing where they're like, let's catch the fucking raptor like we always did. And I'm like, oh yeah, like you always did. We're all here for it. I remember
think
how you did it. You both of you in the previous movie. You were a
Those
team.
Raptors could have had some headgear, though. Honestly,
Some
like,
lasers,
a little
have their own laser
action
sights
or something. Yeah.
You know?
I don't know.
I want to say
makes more
I want to
sense
say
than
this.
everything happening in Jurassic World, but
I think this sequence would work much better for me if the main conflict of the film wasn't about the locusts. You know, like it is really interesting to see how.
But
now
it
that
isn't
dinosaurs,
for those characters because it's completely separate.
Hold on. Let me finish.
But that scene itself isn't about the locusts. Just to
You're right. It isn't. But the core conflict in this movie is the locusts. Like that's the main threat to the globe in this movie, not dinosaurs being integrated into our ecosystems, which I think is what they should have done. What could have been interesting, and I just want to propose an alternate version of this movie, is I think this Malta sequence would have worked better for me if, say, we see that there's this like underground fighting ring of dinosaurs in Malta. Like, I think that's a really cool concept. Biosyn, and I mentioned this to Christian when we walked out of the theater, this is the silliest fucking thing. And I've mentioned something like this in all of our previous episodes in regards to the original Jurassic Park novel. Biosyn is the original antagonist corporation in Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park novel. And it took us 30 years to finally have the name Biosyn dropped in a Jurassic Park film. And the way they function in the book is similar to how they function here in the movie, which is they're a scientific corporation that essentially takes other people's discoveries and tries to build on them, take the credit and make them their own, right? So imagine if, like, for the last 30 years, you know, the Barbasol can never made it back to Dodgson. Like, Biosyn has failed in their attempt to replicate the clone dinosaurs that InGen has created. Imagine they've been biding their time for 30 years. And finally, now that these dinosaurs have been released into the wild, they have an opportunity to capture them and take them back to the same facility we see in the narrative of this movie, run tests on them, and then try to enhance them in some way. Like, to me, that's a way more natural plot that focuses on the dinosaurs in a franchise called Jurassic, instead of focusing on these prehistoric bugs that are seemingly just, like, out of place to me in this film, you know? Like, I think there's a better way to incorporate all this stuff and make it seem more natural, like you were talking about earlier, Brian, within the franchise. But the film just doesn't do that.
Chris,
you know, having people capture dinosaurs and fighting them.
You're really.
I'm out of positives, Christian. I have the two positives.
Vibes. You're harsh in the vibes.
I'm just saying. I think, like, that's why the sequence didn't work for me, because. Yeah. Again, you said there's an A plot and a B plot, and really the A plot with the locust is kind of the more important plot in this film. It has a more global threat to it.
No, every time we switch back to, like, Alan Grant and what's her face's plot, I was like, oh, this feels so stupid. Because you're like, why is Alan Grant here? And he says, like, what's funny about this movie, he often goes like, why am I here? Like, yeah. He blatantly says it out loud. But final for me, and we'll see if Brian has any more positive standout moments. Locusts on fire breaking out of the thing, cool imagery. Falling from the sky like meteors, prehistoric dinosaurs. I don't know. It's cool imagery.
Smelling burnt insects in the 4DX theater there's like a particular scent that all these types of attractions use for insect. I'd be really interested to know, like, what exactly that scent is. But if you've ever been to, like, the A Bug's Life attraction in Animal Kingdom, the same scent is used for the stink bug. It's just like squished, gooey insect smell. I can't put my finger on it, but they used that same scent when we were watching the movie and the bugs were burning.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool imagery of a bunch of flaming giant locusts appearing. That was cool. Brian, any other?
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I love how it's coming back to the biblical stuff too, but showing, you know, man playing God is bringing their own kind of these sort of events. You know, obviously we have the actual cataclysmic volcano in the last movie, but yeah, I thought it was cool. Sir, full circle, looked cool. I didn't fully understand why they were staying on fire for so long, but for the imagery, I was like, that's okay. All right, that's fine.
They're prehistoric. Brian,
they're flame, they're
genetically
flame
altered
because they're very old.
Well, B.D. Wong knew that they'd catch on fire and mated them with the African goose flocker who would frequent volcanoes, and their feathers would catch on fire. And did you read the supplemental material, the books?
I only saw the
Chris,
previews.
it's what happens when you deal with non-fans, if you know what I mean.
Oh my God.
They would know about the locusts. All right, Chris, what are some ridiculous parts of this film that really bug you?
I already talked about most of the things that I just genuinely dislike about the movie. We mentioned the Barbasol can earlier and how Christian and I didn't even catch that Dodgson
caught it. I didn't catch it.
Brian and I didn't catch that Dodgson was loading the Barbasol can with more dinosaur embryos, I guess.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In fact, if it ain't broke, go find it on an island and grab it, because clearly he didn't make any more. One of a kind. Finding
that can is so incredibly silly. And on top of that, this was one of these eye roll moments that I had while watching this movie. When he's on the tram and he's trying to escape, and he gets off the tram and he runs into what does he run into?
Hyperloop, Chris. Very specific.
Sorry, he's on his Hyperloop. He gets off it and he runs into what dinosaur? Oh my gosh, a Dilophosaurus, the same one that got not the same one, but the same species that got Wayne Knight in the first movie.
No, I guarantee you, they will tell you that is the same one because they did that with the fucking Brachiosaurus in the goddamn Fallen Kingdom.
Stupid.
They're gonna be like, nope, that's Jubilee.
And
Jubilee
this whole sequence is literally beat for beat the Wayne Knight sequence in Jurassic Park, except. There are 3 Dilophosauruses now instead of the 1, so we changed it.
Dilophosaurus, No Way Home.
Dumb.
We do get okay. I was pretty off board with a lot of what's happening in the third act. Where I think the movie really reached its apex for like, okay, it's stupid, but fuck yeah, why not? You know, because they're using so many more animatronics. There's a scene of I forget even what character we know is not going to die is in peril. There's a Dilophosaurus and it's rearing up and it's
Bryce Dallas Howard. It's literally yelling in her face.
And Chris Pratt just fucking grabs it by the throat and cracks its neck. And I was like,
he doesn't crack its neck. I think DeWanda Weiss comes in with like a taser or something and tases its brain.
So violent to the dinosaur, despite them being
from
opening its mouth. Yeah.
But what's important to remember, and this is what made it work from a comedic beat, is that these are the people that love the dinosaurs.
Yes, right, of course.
Choked out, tased in the face.
So muddled, dude.
Yeah.
So quickly back to the Barbasol container guy. Apparently, this is if he was recast, but it may be implied that this is the partner of Newman. I keep of Wayne.
It's not implied,
character.
Brian. He's the same character.
So he explicitly is. He has the
he's
same.
Dodgson, from the first movie.
Okay. See, I did not remember.
But he had tech CEO reconstructive surgery, which is
it's very common.
Where you look like
it's been 30 years.
Okay.
You look like a very young old man. Is that what you ask for? You're like, I want to look really old, but also kind of young.
Yeah, he is literally the same. He's supposed to be the same person.
Yes.
That hires Nedry in the first film to collect the embryos.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and his character is, could go to a little bit of a highlight. I think his character is working more in the beginning when he's introduced and just falls apart slowly as the movie goes on. But I like what Campbell Scott's doing. And part of me was like, this is Ben Parker faked his death in The Amazing Spider-Man. Richard Parker. Brian, any ridiculous moments that you want to point out?
I don't know if I have any standout eye roll moments necessarily. You know, it's the silly stuff like Maisie and Laura Dern and Sam Neill just running into each other on this super secret, highly classified floor. Just stumble.
Seemed like a rushed edit too, where they're like, there's like a noise that happens off screen, and they're like, "Let's go the other way." I was like, "Oh, that feels weird."
Dude,
yeah.
Mamoudou Athie's character, Ramsay Cole, essentially has an "I'm the spy" moment. I literally turned to Christian in the theater and I looked at him and I go, I'm the spy.
See what was ridiculous about that? When he did that to me, I'm like, I rejected it. I was like, oh no, he's playing them. Like he's still part of, because I thought it was so silly. I was like, oh no, he's still a bad guy. He's just like tricking them. But no, he had a full good guy turn. And then there's like, this is where, oh god, these parts, this is like ridiculous moment, which you probably forgot it existed in the film, Brian. I'm going to remind you. There's a film in which his character confronts a Campbell Scott's character, and essentially it's Campbell Scott going on a monologue about, I'm not evil. This is why we do it. We'll rebuild. We must rebuild. And he just sits there and stares at him.
Ramsay Cole is silent, and then
as he's pouring his heart out,
Dodgson looks at him and is like, "What's wrong with you?
I'm not a bad guy. We'll rebuild. This happens with corporations. It's fine." He's like. And then what's the moment? I'm not like you, and just walks away. And you're like, that's the dramatic. Like, I was like, oof, That was cringy of like, none of this is working. Was anybody in the edits going like, oh fuck, this is like Citizen fucking Kane. This is great shit.
This relationship has really been built up and is really been built up.
A meeting of the minds.
Wrought.
We're really putting everything on display. Yeah, this film doesn't give a shit about any of its characters. It doesn't like have it. I don't know. It's so silly. You see Alan Grant. He meets Chris Pratt's character, and he's like, you're the guy who likes raptors. And then
you're the guy that trains raptors.
They have like a fake like talk show conversation. You know when talk shows go to commercial break and they're like. The film does that. It does that in a movie. I've never seen that in a movie where it's like, you're the dinosaur guy. And they're just like, yeah, fake like you are getting to know each other. And they're like,
you guys are hitting it off.
What the fuck are they talking about? I was like, I like dinosaurs. I like dinosaurs too. So good, dinosaurs. Really great. It looks like they're lip syncing that conversation. And Jeff Goldblum's like, I fucking hate these movies. Like out loud, almost verbatim. And that's what's keeping me in the drama of the film. Chris, any other silly moments you want to point out?
No, the only other thing we didn't fully touch on it, the battle between the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus and the Therizinosaurus, where the T-Rex throws him. And if you look at the Therizinosaurus's face in that moment, its hands are literally just out, and it's like not even fully aware of what's going on. The T-Rex is kind of just using it as like a means to stab this larger dinosaur. It is on par with the battle at the end of the first Jurassic World. It is so incredibly stupid. But these creatures are not acting like animals.
It wanted us to feel when the T-Rex opens its eye. It wanted us to feel like Captain America grabbed Thor's hammer.
Oh
like
yeah,
it wanted that, but it's a fucking dinosaur, man.
It's the main
You
character.
can't make these dinosaurs people. Oh, ridiculous moments, and this will be it, and then we can wrap up closing thoughts because it's getting late. The fact that Chris Pratt makes a promise to a velociraptor
and keeps it
is like the writers of this film just keep lying to themselves that we're like, yeah, they're friends. It's a
Blue is just a really Blue's a fucking dog, you know, like
wow. How dare you?
Brian is shooketh. Blue's a pet, man. Like I
Jurassic World, Blue's Clues.
I think, and I'm not original in saying this, I think it's patently ridiculous because if it was a film about a dog, it's like a wolf, like a ravenous wolf.
Yeah.
But is also our friend. But then later in the movie, it has wolves that look exactly the same that are just evil monsters. And the film wants us to be scared of raptors and also friends with raptors. And I don't think it's accomplishing that like in the first film, raptors aren't seen. They're the Jaws. They're the don't fuck with a raptor. And this whole series has patently it's the Darth Vader problem, Chris.
Oh my gosh.
You can't talk
Don't even try.
to Darth Vader and have him be like, I'm not threatening in certain circumstances. The raptor is just like...
This is what it's... Go ahead.
Yeah, but the film does not, because fucking Chris Pratt has no problem with this girl tasing another raptor, like a feathered raptor in the face, and he doesn't give a shit about the humanity of the raptor if it's trying to eat him. And so it has this like battle with itself about how you're supposed to view these dinosaurs. Like, be scared of them, but they're also our friends, and we can have picnics together. And you're like, you really can't. Your cake is all over your face, but you're trying to tell me it's pretty. You can't do both at the same time. Have your cake and eat it too. That's what I'm trying to say, Chris. Don't look at me confused.
No, I thought you were building on that.
Yeah, I was, but then I was like,
and eating it too.
what do I do with all this cake all over me? It's crazy.
I was just going to say to that point, yeah, I think they are trying. This is another kind of undercooked idea here, but the relationship with Blue, where he's kind of living by Chris Pratt because of some like subconscious territorial thing, I guess, which leads them to catching. She, yes. And there's this idea of at the end of the movie, they want it to be like, these are just another branch of nature. Basically, we kind of have to learn how to live with them. And they really didn't do much work for that outside of showing that, like, oh yeah, one character has this one relationship.
Right. Why is the movie, why is that the capstone for the movie?
Yeah.
When the narrative and conflict wasn't about that.
It was not. Yeah. No, it's a very fair criticism.
Plus, you should have probably made him friends with like a vegetarian, like dinosaur, not one of the ones that would eat humans.
Give him give him like a
little triceratops,
a baby triceratops.
Yeah.
You know, I talked about Camp Cretaceous a couple of years ago. There's a very adorable little ankylosaurus in that show called Bumpy. Like, they're all fucking like there's plenty of dinosaurs you could choose from that are seemingly more harmless.
Yeah, Chris Pratt saving Bumpy's kid, definitely way more viable than him being like, I'm gonna find this little baby velociraptor that would just eat my face if I looked at it wrong. Literally, I had to fucking dart down to put on my back. Yeah, so stupid. So dumb. But he's my friend. Why is he sedated? Yeah, if every time we had to hang out, I had to fucking shoot a dart in your neck and drag you around and be like, no, but we're friends.
Heading me, we're
This is
friends.
totally
He's playing the video
consensual.
game. He's fine.
We're good with this.
He's not unconscious. If I wake him, he will eat my face. But in this sedated state,
The film
he's
shows
my
a
friend.
lack of consideration to the tonality of everything that's come before it. There's a scene that I had pointed out to Chris that was like, you'd never want this. I'm like, this is a callback, but they don't realize it's a callback, which is a problem because thematically it breaks all of our character development. There's a scene in which the plane chick, who also, by the way, is like, oh, I'm an expert in stuff. Do I need to explain it very quickly? Air Force. Yeah. I was in the Air Force. That's why I'm so good at things.
Air Force, Navy.
The shorthand of like, oh, Navy, Air Force, cool. That's why we have our skill set. Now the nerds won't complain that we're capable because we have training. Anyway, it's a digression. But they're on their way to the trying to be on the fucking dinosaur park. It's just dinosaur park for the 6th movie. And they get attacked by the feathered velociraptor. And we're all like, oh, fuck, they finally gave him feathers. Thank God. The movie, what fans always wanted, feathery dinosaurs. Thank God.
I've been waiting.
And I think it's actually a pretty okay scene with the diving underwater. And I think the way our characters get out of problems generally is not interesting in a lot of these action set pieces, but visually kind of cool. But they get out. They're out of harm's way. They have a metal cage. They're getting in an elevator, and the raptor is like there, but they're safe because they're in the elevator. And she, for fucking fun's sake, tases him, and he runs away. And I'm like, that mirrors Jurassic Park: The Lost World, when the dude who gets his comeuppance tasers the Compithagis. So it's like literally beat for beat, kind of the same cruelty of like, and fuck off, this is where humans are. I'm like, you're so at odds with what you are, film. Like, we like this character. She survives. She does not get, oh, you shouldn't have fucked with dinosaurs. They're people too, or whatever the fuck the film's trying to say. No, it's a cool moment of her literally having the stance that character that we deemed bad in The Lost World of, oh, I'll fucking show you who's boss. And our character does that. And the movie doesn't acknowledge that that's a problem in the fucking Let's Save the Dinosaurs movie.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Did you do your sequel rewatch before you made the film? Because I did. I'm paying attention.
The Popaholics did the work.
It makes me laugh that I've heard Colin Trevorrow in multiple interviews go, I just want to honor Michael Crichton's vision and Steven Spielberg's vision. And look, you're not doing it, bud. Like, this is so far from what those original pieces of material were supposed to be. Like, it is just absolutely absurd that you think including these legacy actors in this film is enough to honor the original material. Get out of here. And look, I'm a huge proponent of his unmade Star Wars script. I was joking with Brian before we recorded that, like, it's sad that, and this is hyperbole because I told Brian that I genuinely do like Safety Not Guaranteed, but it's sad that his best movie was the one that wasn't made.
Yeah, I'm just not super impressed with Colin Trevorrow's career, and this is not a good mark on his history. And I can't say that I have a ton of respect for him as a filmmaker. Safety Not Guaranteed, I think I would agree, is his best film. This is bad. It's a bad movie with some good ideas going on.
I have to say, in terms of cringe moments, when Laura Dern's character said that Jeff Goldblum slid into her DMs, my eyes nearly did a full 360 around in the back of my head.
I'm blind.
It was really, really bad.
Yeah, no, not something that should be written out, said, or put in a film such as this.
Nope.
All right. Well, that's Jurassic World Dominion. I think we all give it not our favorite.
Not our favorite. Has some things in it. That's Jurassic June, though.
It is.
I gotta say, this was
Concluded.
a fun experience going through these.
It was.
I have a little bit of a newfound appreciation in some respects, I gotta say.
Yeah, and it's sad because Jurassic, even speaking to Dominion, there's so much cool dinosaur effects happening. I think some of the CG looks really great. I think some of the set pieces are good. Even the animatronics that are happening clearly could not save the film. I had talked about so much about the animatronics and stuff that makes these films awesome. That's some of my favorite parts of what's going on in this newer film. But to see the different technologies merge and the evolution of them, and the fact that, like, from a special effects standpoint, it's not always about what's newest is best. It's not always about what technologies, how many GPUs you had to render your dinosaur, what year you made the animatronics in. It's like, how are you using the tools that you have? And I think that's always a good reminder for young filmmakers and for anybody, any creator. Like, yes, more money, more special effects, better equipment. Like, it helps. It certainly does. But how you use the tools is always 3,000 times more important to your overall end product than how much horsepower you're putting behind any of this stuff. Like, it really does make a hell of a difference, framing and using these tools very, very effectively. As for seeing the fact that the best movie was made as they were inventing CGI. Let that be said.
Very true.
Chris, any final thoughts on Jurassic June?
I also had a lot of fun revisiting these films. I still like this franchise, most of the movies in this franchise, but this one definitely is the worst. But I'm happy we did this. As a pop culture podcast, this is a month that I was really anticipating and was trying to find a reason to do at some point in time. And I'm glad that we finally did it.
And the reason is
it was worth it.
Jurassic World Dominion. And the reason is you. Ooh, stank.
You all right there, bud?
That's a Hot Rod reference. When he's coming back to life, first thing he says is "Hoopa stank."
Hoopa stank. Yeah.
Real film fans would know. All right, I'm going to change my lighting here. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet? Oh, I like this.
Loyal listeners and viewers, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. And then you can read my writings, my nerdy ramblings on a monthly basis at carefulforspoilers.com.
Midnight Satire is my band. You should check that out on your favorite podcast platforms of choice. If you want to see what's happening right now, which is pissing Chris off quite a bit, probably more than the 40X experience that I forced him to go under.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
These are Nan lights, by the way, in case you want to pick one of these up. It's a lot of fun if you want to have as much fun as I do. Midnight Satire is my band. Popaholics, you can follow us on all the social media, whether you're listening to the podcast or watching all the super cool lighting that's happening on YouTube. You can read the video description and subscribe on any of the platforms or follow us on social media. Email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. We read every single email that we receive. If you have an idea for a month, you want us to cover a specific thing, we usually try to center around something new and upcoming in pop culture. Feel free to do so. We read every single email we get. And Chris, what do we have going on next month?
Christian, I could not be more excited about next month because we are going to be doing an artist spotlight on Taika Waititi because we have Thor: Love and Thunder coming out in July. And I've seen most of these movies, and they're all excellent. I'm really excited to revisit them.
Gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for such a clean episode. Chris, Brian, always a pleasure. Can't wait for Taika Waititi Spotlight Month. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope this satisfies us as a great outro, and we'll see you next episode on...